So good afternoon, hackers on planet Earth, the pandemic edition. Welcome back for another day. And if you're tuning in right now, another keynote. So today I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing Idalin Bobe, who's coming to us, I believe from New York City. She could correct me if I'm wrong, which is the usual home from Hope. And you know, with introducing keynotes is always so hard to do because usually there are so many wonderful things. But there's a few phrases I found on her Instagram, which I think really capture who she is. She's a human rights defender and a social justice and movement technologist. What is so inspiring about her is that indeed she's a technologist oriented toward community, education, and empowering those who've often been shut out, but who are taking a stand against society's worst ills. This is evident in everything she has done, and especially the organization that she helped found, which is called techactivist.org. Check it out. I'm going to quote from the webpage from this organization. We are educators, technologists, activists, and disruptors. We believe in the power of unity. We're working hard to develop a space where everyone, regardless of their level of education, can come together, strategize, and create with digital technology. So she founded the organization in the aftermath of Ferguson. She participated on the ground and she provided security help. So this organization continues in that work, but has expanded out, and we surely need it today. Prior positions include global social justice lead at ThoughtWorks and founding partner and former community manager at Black Girls Code. So to wrap up, what she and her decades of work show us is that if we're going to ensure that technology is a tool for liberation and not for oppression, what matters is not simply the technology we use, though that does matter, but what matters is how we use technologies in communities and social movements to uplift others and demand radical political change. So you're here to watch her. Please join me in a huge virtual welcome. And I turn it over to Idalin Bobe.
Hey, thank you, thank you. I definitely wanted to do this in person with all of you. When I first learned about the Hope community, I just thought like Star Wars, the Resistance, Hope, and so many beautiful things. So I'm new to the hacker space and the Hope community. So again, I want to start by thanking the organizers for contacting me and asking me to be a keynote speaker. These are historical times, as many of you know, as you sit through yet another video session. However, you may consider yourself lucky if you're able to work from home and joining video conference after video conference is your biggest concern. However, not everyone can work from home. My mother can't work from home, though she has an autoimmune issue. Okay. This is my mother. She is an essential worker, working 5 days a week while surviving her autoimmune disease. She's out working while in pain. She is working while scared about getting sick and getting others sick, working while feeling moments of sadness, feeling sad about the state of the world, especially how hard life seems for poor Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, regardless how hard we work. She is working while thankful that she is still employed. She is working and praying for her children, family, friends, and anyone who may need a bit of hope or encouragement. She is working while doing her best to share what she can with others. In essence, I start today's talk highlighting my mother because I am my mother's daughter. My mother inspires me so much and is always figuring out new ways on how to improve and how to give back to our community. Everything I do is for my community, which I learned that from my mother. So thank you for allowing me to highlight her as I begin this talk. Anytime I'm asked to share my voice, I do not take it lightly. I know the significance of having a Black and brown person as a speaker, especially at a tech conference, where often you don't see that. My hope today is to connect with someone tuning in right now who is just as hungry as I am for change, who understands the urgency of our time, someone who wants to help, someone willing to stand in solidarity and take action as we continue to dismantle systems that are literally killing us. I'm going to recap my talk today, which will include just a quick introduction about myself, connecting my story to my passion, shared learned lessons from Ferguson, the history of techactivist.org, highlighting the Black Panther Party's community control of modern technology, highlighting some work that's happening in our communities today, share hope, just like my mother taught me, and open up for Q&A. So I'm looking for this to be an interactive discussion. So feel free, if you have questions, to send them. I can see them live as they come in. I may or may not answer them as they come in live, but I would definitely get to them at the end for sure. So this is me. Again, my name is Idalin Bobe, and I'm a Black and Puerto Rican movement technologist. I started talking at 7 years old. I went through a lot of trauma as a child, and something happened to me that I couldn't use my motor skills. From the age of 8 to 18, I attended speech therapy classes on a weekly basis and officially was labeled as a student with a disability. Teachers and students barely understood me. I was known as the quiet girl. I recall watching television and putting the captions on the TV screen so that I can learn how to enunciate words as people were saying them. After a while, my family couldn't afford speech classes, so using the captions on the TV screen was my hack. That hack got me through college, as it helped me increase my vocabulary and my understanding of how to say things. In all honesty, I still use the captions on my TV screen now. I share this story to say this is just one of many ways technology has helped me grow to who I am today. And I believe we all share a story on our first experience with technology and how we fell in love with it and wanted to use it for social good, which further takes me on my journey. I grew up in North Philadelphia in a neighborhood called Badlands, which is in the Kensington, Fairhaven area in Philadelphia. Today, the neighborhood battles with housing, food insecurity, rates of unemployment up to 50%, over-policing, and high surveillance. Though this story is not new, my neighborhood can be seen in New York, Detroit, Chicago, Oakland, and in cities all across the United States. I went to a high school, Thomas Edison, that had a 75% dropout rate. What that looked like was in 9th grade, my teacher told us as they packed us all into the auditorium room, look to your left, look to your right. One day, one of you won't be here. We had more police officers than actual teachers. I, like Yashmi, who is the keynote speaker yesterday, survived the school to prison pipeline, which I just want to point out how often your speakers or people in the room who are a person of color goes through trauma because they survived the school to prison pipeline. However, I was still put in handcuffs several times for activities like missing detention because I came in late after spending 30 minutes waiting in line to go through a metal detector before I got into school. Graduating high school, I barely knew how to read and write. However, thanks to a community program called the Philadelphia Partnership, I was able to go into a state college, IUP. I can talk about the details of that program another time, but I want to focus on the fact that when I started school freshman year, I didn't even know what a number line was. I attended IUP, and my first year of school was very difficult. I struggled with academic probation. And if you could just fast forward to my senior year of college, I ended up actually graduating with the highest GPA as a person of color in my field, which was a 3.86 in marketing and applied statistics. So how did I do that? Not knowing anything about math, not knowing what a number line was, but graduating with a 3.86 in applied statistics. I blamed the internet. No, not the music band, which if you haven't heard them, please go check them out, but the internet. I used online discussion boards frequently as I asked people to help me with particular questions that I was too embarrassed to ask in class. Or oftentimes when I did ask in class, the professor would say, you know, you should really quit school and go back to middle school. Or if I attended after class programs where they had tutoring, a lot of the other folks would like make fun of me or wouldn't want me to go. So to me, I felt safe online talking to people who were willing to help me out. I will look up and learn from YouTube videos, ask people if they can help me find additional information on certain topics. Again, there were lots of self-study and online collaboration that really helped me propel in school. I left college feeling like a laptop with working internet was the winning combination to all of success, and wanted to put a laptop in every person's hand that was from a poor neighborhood. I saw my own development as a testimony of how a person can close their own achievement gap, and felt the same could happen for others. I guess, you know, for so many years, I thought, it's bad to say, but I did think I was dumb. But in actuality, I was never given the opportunity to learn. And that passion to want to share education and the power of the internet led me on a phenomenal path. My first pivot away from corporate America, where I had my first job and was struggling to climb the corporate ladder, was to further my education. I ended up attending Mills College, which is located in Oakland, California. It's a school for femme and non-binary students. The school was predominantly Black and Latinx, and I went to get my MBA and studied courses from the computer science program, which is still where most of my connections lie. Before starting the program, I never even knew of computer science, never knew how to program, and I ended up being the second top student in the class. While attending school, I started community programs teaching young people about computer programming and basic digital literacy skills. I was invited to go to southern India in Tamil Nadu to start a computer program for women and youth to help with agriculture. I partnered with Kimberly Bryant, who is the amazing founder of Black Girls Code, to educate over 2,000 young girls in computer science. I connected with groups like Yes We Code and Keynote Labs to create hackathons with ideas like, what if an app could have saved Trayvon Martin? One of my proudest memories is seeing the shift of what happened to Google search engine after a person typed Black girls. In 2011, so many bad words would follow Black girls. Often you would see angry, bad, fighting, ugly. But today, and as of early as 2013, Black Girls Code became the first or the second thing that popped up, shifting the narrative completely of what a Black girl could be and who we are in the world. Many things happened in the world, and to me, from 2009 to 2014, I was dealing with a type of exhaustion that was deep in my spirit. Since a child, I had to battle with police brutality. And as a young adult, I tried and worked 100 hours a week to really build community programs to change the trajectory and the narrative of my community. And still, the media and the police continued to kill us. Oscar Grant, Rekia Boyd, Miriam Carey, Eric Gardner, Mike Brown. By the summer of 2014, when unarmed teenager Mike Brown was brutally killed by former Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson, I believe I can speak for most of Black America. We were exhausted. We were tired. This sparked the summer of the Ferguson Uprising, a similar rebellion like we see today after the killing of George Floyd. And I want to note the difference between a riot versus a rebellion. I'm very mindful that I'm using the word rebellion, and I'm not saying that these were riots. What you're seeing today is not a riot. We see riots all the time, especially in white America. Let a sports team win and you will see people riot, destroying things for no reason, just because they can. It's an expression of power and energy. One of the worst riots in American history was the race riots in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from May 31st to June 1st, 1921. Happened almost it happened almost 100 years ago, where a white mob upset that a young teenager, this young Black man, got on an elevator with a white young woman. They used the media to basically amplify this false narrative, and they destroyed an entire community that was referred to as Black Wall Street. Thousands of white citizens poured into the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and burned over 1,500 homes, 600 Black-owned businesses, 21 churches, a school, a hospital, and killed about 300 people. Over 8,000 people were made homeless during that time period. Mind you, not one person was arrested for that. However, Black people who defended themselves did get arrested. The media likes to say Black people riots, but when in fact we are defending our lives and we're defending life. And that is why rebellion is inherently meaningful. It is important we start to call the uprisings we see around the world and around the US as a rebellion, so that our youth and others can understand its significance and are vilified by the media for standing up and joining them. Rebellions have been part of our legacy as we have tried to make America redeem its humanity time and time again. We, Black, brown, indigenous people, are, after all, children of rebellions. Rebellions defend life, and we are defenders of life. Going back to Ferguson. Ferguson completely politicized me. It helped me understand that this was just not a case of police brutality. For so long, I just went around the world thinking like F the police, and the police is our enemy, and who is the man? The police. And I realized that we really had to look at the conditions of what made Ferguson. Ferguson is a suburb of the greater St. Louis city. And I don't know about you, but when I hear suburb, I think of upper and middle class. However, that was not the case with Ferguson. What was once a flourishing community with shopping centers, because America loves to consume stuff, became a place with food deserts. 20% of the Black labor force in Ferguson was unemployed. But when you look at the Black men between the ages of 16 and 30, unemployment went as high as 47%, which is pretty common in Philadelphia and Chicago and Oakland. On top of all of this, Ferguson is one of 91 municipalities in the St. Louis County. Each municipality has its own judge, prosecutor, and police force. To make that more vivid, imagine you're a Black person living in Ferguson and you're driving to your job that's 10 minutes away. Your tail light is out. In the midst of those 10 minutes, you're going maybe through like 3 or 4 municipalities. That means you can acquire about 3 or more tickets from local police offices, each ticket representing a different jurisdiction. Let's say each ticket is about $60 to $100. That adds up quickly. In the Department of Justice, there was an investigation done by the Department of Justice. And in that investigation, it concluded that police did, in fact, over-police the Black community members and target them often. In Ferguson alone, Black people make up 60% of the population, but 93% of the arrests and 85% of people who were stopped for a vehicle violation. As I learned one day, while I spent a day in the local jail after being arrested, part of the Ferguson uprising, many people were in the local jail because they couldn't afford bail. Often the story went, they got multiple tickets on one thing, couldn't pay the fines, their court appearances got switched and conflicted with their work schedule, and then a warrant for their arrest was made. And then they lost their job because they're stuck in jail because they can't afford bail. So you have to understand, people are just irritated with the police. Then you add police brutality and killings of unarmed young people like that of Mike Brown. You had several cases a year or two before Mike Brown's murder, and even within the 3-week period of when Darren Wilson murdered Mike Brown, 3 other youth were murdered. These were the conditions that caused a rebellion, where people had enough and demanded dignity, an end to police harassment. They demanded quality housing, employment, to be heard and not to be vilified by the media. It is important that we take time to analyze the living conditions of Ferguson, because that is the future of America. Ferguson is a lot of what suburbs will be the next 5 years or less. Many cities are experiencing gentrification, and many poor communities are being pushed out to suburbs that do not have the infrastructure to tend to this community's needs. Suburbs lack public transportation, they're food deserts. It's not like an inner city where you have bodegas and little corner stores, or you may have subways and buses that run every 15 minutes. Suburbs were created to be isolated communities. And with more poor communities being pushed out, as people with wealth move into the inner cities, we lose the community support and become prey of predatory systems of injustice. One of the biggest lessons I learned from Ferguson was our history is not being captured. Like today, our history is not being captured. When Mike Brown's body laid out on the hot street for 4 hours, it wasn't people who had academic fellowships who defended his life and stood out there screaming those first few days. Young people who were tatted up did that. Young people who were tatted up got the world's attention. So often academics, researchers, and celebrities often take credit and are given credit for being able to explain someone else's lived condition. When you look at our current history books, the people highlighted as leaders of the Ferguson uprisings are not the same people who captured the world's attention. In here, from the left to the right, I include pictures of a few people I wanted to highlight, such as Tef Poe, Tara Thompson, Tori Russell, Rika Taylor, T-Dub O, The Lost Voices, Bassam Masri, and Darren Seals. Now, it's important to also note that Darren Seals and Bassam have both passed away. And there's many deaths that came out of the Ferguson uprising that many people don't know. Another name to lift up is Josh Williams, who stood up as a brave teenager, only 18 years old, demanding justice in the community. He still today is a political prisoner of the Ferguson uprising, charged with arson and given 10 years. Many people know it's undercover police who often initiate violence and arson and then arrest you after you join in. That takes me to my next learned lesson. We aren't dealing with local police departments. We're dealing with an intelligent force that specializes in violence and creating mass weapons of destruction, which the same tactics used on us within the United States are being used on people all around the world, like in Palestine. We are up against a very militarized police force, a very intelligent force that collects data on us, performs data mining practices on our social media accounts and other digital services that we use and sign up because they're free. Police use software and algorithms and stingrays and so many more gadgets that our people aren't aware of, we're not prepared for, we don't know. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm well aware that surveillance is nothing new to our communities. A book I like to reference is Dark Matters, on the surveillance of Black bodies by Dr. Simone Brown. She highlights 18th century laws like lantern laws in New York City demanded that Black, mixed race, and indigenous enslaved people carry candle lanterns with them if they walked about the city after sunset and if they weren't in the company of a white person. The law prescribed various punishments for those that did not carry the supervisory device. Any white person was given the power to stop those who walked without the lit candle after dark. So you can see the legal framework for stop and frisk policing practices was established long before our contemporary era. And even before that, we were tracked and our data was collected during the transatlantic slave trade. Overall, Ferguson shifted my approach on how I showed up in my community. And I think this is important to know that even me as a person of color that grew up in the hood, I was showing up not understanding power dynamics. I was showing up with really focusing on individual achievement, which is what most nonprofits language is used to, where you're just like, the problem is, you're gonna help one person, you're gonna have them climb this ladder of success and they're gonna get out, versus the betterment of the collective, the betterment of the entire community. So my approach shifted from charity versus self-determination. Our people are not ready for what we're seeing today or in 2014. I wasn't ready, I'm still not ready to go up what we're against as we're demanding human dignity. But as Assata Shakur said, and we continue to chant, it is our duty to win. It is our duty to win. And if we're going to win, we have to prepare. Huey P. Newton said, knowing how to struggle is the essence of winning. Recognizing ills is fundamental. Recognizing how to overcome ills is mandatory. One of my OGs, Willie Baptist, said, you have to know what you're up against. If you're going into a fight and you think your opponent is a teddy bear, but when you get there it's a grizzly bear, man, you're in trouble. And how I understand these quotes is that if we want to win, we need to have an accurate assessment of the situation, an accurate analysis of the problem we aim to solve. So how do we prepare? Thankfully for us, there's so many books that we can actually self-study, and there's so many leaders in our movements that we can lean on. Some books I started with were The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis, the Huey P. Newton Reader. Legit, I feel anything you read about the Black Panther Party is going to be exceptional, because though you'll pick up the book as a young Black nationalist and you're just like, yes, we need to like secure our people and protect our people, you will quickly understand that the issues we're dealing with impact majority of the people in the world. And I love to read how the party developed their ideology to go from Black nationalism to internationalism. People I met that I want to highlight, on the bottom, I have a picture that says it's not enough to be angry. That's Willie Baptist. And he really taught me it's not enough to be angry. I can't be walking around just angry. You need to like know what you're up against and have an analysis. Above that picture is Claudia de la Cruz, who taught me the importance of loving our people and not being scared to stay in the trenches with them. So many of our people are scared of our own people. On the right of Claudia, you have a white man, Chris Caruso, who is super dope, taught me the importance of understanding political economy. On the right of him is Liz Theo Harris, who taught me the role that religion plays in justifying oppression and lifting up white supremacy. On the right of Willie Baptist, you have BJ Prasad, who helped me understand global politics. On the right of him, you have Ola Bini, a well-known contributor to privacy and digital rights. He taught me the importance of privacy. A lot of what I teach in my classes, I actually learned from Ola, and understood and learned the importance of educating our people on those tools and encouraging them to gain skills so that we too, as people of color, can contribute to those skills. Ola and I have been dear friends for about 6 years. As many of you know, he too is a political prisoner currently, arrested in Ecuador for having too many passwords and too many books on security and hacking. He is a defender of human rights and works with the most marginalized communities, educating people like me on tools. If you don't know about Ola, please look up his work and what he's currently up against. On the right of him is Sister Elaine Brown, former chairperson of the Black Panther Party, who taught me that in 1972, the Black Panther Party added community control of modern technology to their 10th point of the 10-point program. It reads, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. Community control of modern technology was added because in 1972, Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party had an analysis on what would happen to our people if computers and digital communication devices became part of the oppressor's tool. I don't even know if many people know that, even as part of Black history. Today, so often, the conversation with the Black community and tech is about diversity. But in 1972, it was more about diversity. It was more about trying to adapt and assimilate into Silicon Valley and those type of workplaces, but to really understand the tools and to gain control so that we can use those tools. So in 2015, I founded techactivist.org and took the lessons I learned from others and created an initiative to educate activists in computer programming so they too can contribute to the creation of privacy enhancing tools and also hold Silicon Valley accountable for their role in their marriage to state violence. Since founding the organization, we worked with over 2,000 activists. We've created 5 10-week-long training sessions on different topics where students learned web development, and they built websites to help promote, Black-owned businesses and social justice organizations. We created a program where students learn storytelling through gaming. And we also did a program on Python. Though the program is still in its baby stage, we want to learn how to partner with other educators out there to help with curriculum developments and empower more activists to contribute to current projects that we see that we love, like the Lucy Parsons Lab. Nonetheless, we still, even though we're super small, have been able to participate in amazing initiatives and be part of coalitions like the Radical Connections, a group of movement technologists that includes some of our favorite people that you'll hear later on during the conference, which is Mickey Meats, Alfredo Lopez, Ken Montenegro, just to name a few. And we've definitely partnered with the Electronic Frontier Alliance group. Overall, I do believe digital security and privacy is self-defense in the 21st century. The goal I have is not to scare our people. So often I feel like many tech talks causes fear and paranoia versus teaching people actual skills that they can use. I like talking about the fact that yes, the US has so much data on us, but how ridiculous is it that has yet been successful in preventing a crime? They have so much data, they don't know what to do with it. So how can we use that to our advantage? How can we use today's technologies to help with our movements? I like to have conversations and debates like, how would Malcolm X have used tech today? Or what would it look like if we taught the homeless community or young people who are experiencing gentrification or are struggling with housing? What would happen if we taught them 3D printing? Now that we live in a world where you can actually 3D print a home. I saw this image on social media yesterday on my pastor's Instagram page. And I feel like this is common sense. It's like a regular if-then statement. If you have quality food, quality education, housing, healthcare, then the people in your community will be okay. If not, then you will have people who are organized and demand for a better living situation. So it's like, if we can predict rebellions and call them problematic zip codes, then why can't we use these same systems to predict who is in need of resources and redistribute resources to care for these people? And it's very simple. I'm not trying to idolize or fantasize about America that does not exist. The US is not prepared to supply its people with aid or resources. It's only prepared for war and violence. And we can see that even in today's pandemic. We suffered so many weeks where people still don't have food, they still don't have housing. Medical workers still don't have the proper aid and protection to even tend to what they're doing. But how fast was the US, how fast were they able to send militarized police and the National Guard to go to war with its people? There was a budget and a plan set for violence suppression, but not for aid. And I do want us to sit and think about that. The next upcoming months will be hard. Unemployment skyrocketed to over 50 million new people signed up for unemployment benefits. That doesn't include the people who are not allowed, that they don't qualify for unemployment. That doesn't include the people who are unemployed before, who are underemployed today. Housing and evictions are estimated to peak in September. And for the past 3 months, we've seen 30% of renters not even able to pay their rents. With the rise of unemployment, more people and their families are off of healthcare. We have a lot to prepare for. And as my OG Willie would say, is we only get what we're organized to take. So my question is, what are we doing to support the people on the front lines? not just amplifying people who are writing up the research, capturing their work, but how are we technologists supporting the people on the ground and working with them in collaboration? People who they come from all types of education backgrounds. Before we open up for Q&A, I often get told, hey, I'm a white person and I don't know how to get involved. And I'm so sorry for my ancestors. I have so much guilt. What should I do? Real fast, I can't do anything with your guilt. But just as I'm learning and unlearning, and every day I'm challenging myself to grow, so can you. Study people like John Brown, whose picture is on the left, and the Grimke sisters. They too are part of your history and your ancestors. History is written in a way to divide us. Learn how we work together, because there's so many stories where you have people working together. And that's what we need to continue to do. We need all the people we can to get organized and really shift and make a change for justice. So thank you so much for listening to my talk. I am here again as a newbie to the Hope community and wanting to connect and collaborate. So please feel free to reach out to me via Instagram, via Twitter. I'm here open and ready to listen. I know we have some questions I wanted to take some time to answer. There's a question saying, with COVID-19, many schools, colleges are opting to educate students online. What are your thoughts on online learning when many individuals state in-person classes are crucial to social and skills development? I just want to highlight, in New York City, 300,000 students do not have access to the internet and they don't have an access to a laptop. So my greatest fear, as someone who fell in love and closed my achievement gap with a laptop and internet, is just seeing how many young people don't even have access to that, and how further that will widen this educational gap, achievement gap. And sadly, those communities are young Black and Brown people. I do think, if we had all the skill sets and tools to really build this up, it wouldn't be so bad. I read a study, I read this article stating that rich people are creating pods of schools, and they're each funneling like 100,000 for 10 students, so they could pay a teacher to really go in and supplement the online learnings. And how sad that our students don't even have access to a laptop. And that is what scares me most about COVID-19 and our time today. Another question that came in says, what can the media do to better report on the people you cite who helped advocate during the Ferguson incident? Now it's really interesting, because I feel like who really amplified voices on Ferguson were people in Silicon Valley, who they picked up the names of people that they wanted to lift up. And I felt like it was Silicon Valley who then funneled so much money to these individuals who they didn't really challenge much. They said, they said the right things. And I feel like that's another confusing thing, is people, they have the terms to say, but when you're looking at what they do, they don't belong to any organization on the ground. And if you look at who they work with, they only work with other academics in universities receiving fellowships up to $500,000 a year. They don't represent the average working class person. And it's no shade to them, because I feel like we need people to study and to research and to write, but it's a problem when you're taking all the resources and you're not giving back to the people on the ground. And that's my critique there. And what we can do about the media. We can support media who actually lifts up our voices, like Breakthrough Media. It's a new organization that's coming out of the People's Forum. The People's Forum is a movement incubator here in New York City. And we launched our own media who are doing reports on what's happening around the United States in people's movements. And I think the more we circulate that, which social media has definitely helped, the more we can actually get the voices of people who are actually on the ground lifted up. And I think it's important for us to also just challenge people like, yeah, we hear your analysis and we see your pictures that you've taken, but what are you doing to make sure some of those funds that you're allocating are going back to the people who were actually impacted? There's another question saying, can you share the most popular training requests you get from community organizations, activists, etc.? What was interesting in Ferguson, well, one, I was only supposed to be there for 3 weeks. And you had Darren Seals, who was murdered in Ferguson. He was an activist. No one knows exactly what happened. It's like a mystery. And he continued to nudge me and say, like, I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to build a website. I want to, like, yo, teach me how to build something. And people are actually really hungry to learn how to create and build. So I would say website development was definitely number one. Digital security is by far the most requested. People want to know, what can they do to protect themselves? Often, you know, it's just your behavior. As I tell people, you can have all the latest tools, but if you're still sharing your information, if you're like texting out in the open and anyone can look at you, it's your behavior, how you carry yourself. Like we all kind of grew up with, you know, given kind of accepting that we don't have any rights to our own privacy. And it's like, we don't have anything to hide because we were taught privacy and doing something in private means doing something that is wrong. So a lot of us, we don't have just the mindset of privacy. And I think that's the number one thing that we can help teach. Interesting enough is in the tech activist courses and workshops, even when we're doing one-day workshops, I'll have about like 80 students come in. You'll see like 40% being young people and like 45% being actually people 60 years old and over who have been hacked or they don't really know how to use online tools. And I would say that's another thing that we're seeing a lot in our community. So I have about 1 minute left and I have a lot of questions, so I'm not too sure what to answer. I don't think I can answer it in 1 minute, but again, I just wanted to thank you all. If you send me questions through my social media handle, I'll be sure to answer, or I can go to the online discussion with hope.net and keep the conversations going. Again, I wanted to thank you all for welcoming me to your space. I really enjoyed my time, and I'm hoping next time we get to really collaborate and continue this discussion and work together. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm on. I'm Gabriella Coleman, a former speaker, and I just wanted to thank you so much for that amazing, engaging, thoughtful, educational, inspiring talk. I'm so happy that it's online as a resource for others to use and learn from. So I just hope you will return to Hope when it's in person, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for participating today.